Aloha and welcome to This Is Now. We begin with a live look out in Kailua where Honolulu police are responding to an apparent barricade situation in a neighborhood there. There's not much we know at this point, but we do know this was initially classified as a property damage call. As you can see, firefighters and police are still on scene. Kihapai Street is closed from Alvai to Kahoa Drive. Our cameraman is there working to get some more information, and we'll be sure to bring it to you in later editions of Hawaii News Now, both on air and online. We want to turn now to the latest out of Maui and Hawaii as the state is once again on alert as the threat for fire is increased later this week. Our First Alert weather team will have more on that later in the show.
Meanwhile, Governor Josh Green says search and rescue teams have been dismissed, but more than 500 FEMA personnel are still on the ground as the search for victims is in its final stages. This comes as Maui police released the identities of 2 confirmed fatalities.
The latest victims to be identified by Maui police include 50-year-old Eugene Ricolizado and 59-year-old Mark Kaminsky. Both were from Lahaina. So far, 45 victims have been publicly identified, and right now the death toll stands at 115, where it has remained for several days now. At last check, hundreds are still unaccounted for as the search through the rubble nears completion. Earlier this week, crews said they would continue searching the harbor and shores of Lahaina, where we know people jumped into the water to escape the flames. The FBI is constantly adjusting their list of names of people who remain missing as they gather more information. Some people are being reported safe, while others are being found among the rubble. And happening today at 1 o'clock, Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson and other county and state officials will provide an update on the wildfire recovery efforts. It's expected the officials will outline a timeline for residents to return into the disaster area, and they're also expected to discuss the next phase of this recovery effort.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been selected by the state and Maui County to lead efforts to remove fire-damaged debris left behind by the historic fires. Governor Josh Green says the Phase 2 work will be the beginning of personal property debris removal once the EPA has removed household hazardous materials from the affected areas. The timeline for this phase is still being developed, and Maui County will provide more information to residents in the coming days. Now, many residents who lost their homes are hoping they'll be able to go back before the bulldozers come in. Daryl Huff shows us how volunteers are helping Kula residents salvage what they can.
We respected this homeowner's request for privacy and her grief and concentration on the tedious and terrible task, but without words, her posture over the home she was raised in expressed so much. The volunteers with Samaritan's Purse had some small triumphs here. A favorite bell, still capable of a cheering tone, and her mother's engagement ring.
So they're still searching for her engagement ring, but to have one thing like that for them to hold on to is really precious.
It's hard to understand how difficult this is until you're knee deep in it. Well, there might be an artifact like this just sitting out in the open. Most everything else is buried under tons and tons of rubble, houses that have collapsed, putting everything deep underneath, and they have to dig it up to get to it. Across the street, Ross Hart is upbeat. He and his wife escaped with their most precious stuff, and he appreciates the volunteers.
You know, it's hard by yourself and digging and scraping through the ash, and you start finding things, and then pretty soon you're off track, and you're going everywhere.
This container is full of PPE like these masks, gloves, Tyvek suits, all just waiting for the moment when Lahaina homeowners will be told that they could go and visit their homes for the last time. But because of the dense debris field and the mix of toxic chemicals in Lahaina, it's not clear residents there will get that chance. The plan is to spray the ash with a sealant like hydromulch to make it safer and easier to remove and ship out.
Once they apply that you would no longer be able to sift or to do anything on that property. We're working with the local officials and all the way up to the governor's office. We're working with them to create a plan for these homeowners that would give a period of time for them to go in and recover items.
It's a sad but potentially precious opportunity. The county may announce whether Lahaina residents will have it at a press conference Tuesday afternoon. Reporting from Maui, Daryl Huff, Hawaii News Now.
Meanwhile, the governor met with survivors in Lahaina to reassure them that the government is working to provide them with more short and long-term support. Casey Lund is in Lahaina with more on that visit and what displaced families need now.
Aloha. One of the most important parts of the governor's visit happened in Ka'anapali at the Hyatt Regency. That's the Family Assistance Center. That's where he was able to meet with many of the Lahaina families that have been displaced. That is sort of a one-stop shop for everybody that needs to get all they need to rebuild their lives, or at least begin to attempt to do that. But the governor's visit actually started in Upcountry. That's where he and the congressional delegation visited earlier yesterday. The delegation met with local lawmakers and visited with impacted community members and business owners there. Then they came back down to the west side here and went through Kuamana, down Front Street, and saw the rest of Lahaina so they could get a first-hand look at all the devastation. They promised to help with immediate short-term and long-term needs for the people of Maui. Then Governor Green came back down to the Family Assistance Center at the Hyatt Regency to meet with survivors and try to assure them that he's here to address their needs.
We feel it as a town. Lahaina isn't a place, it's the people here. And we are all Lahaina. It's all of our Ohanas out here. And to see our friends, our families go through this and looking for people, that's the toughest part for everyone. You know, we can rebuild, and we're going to rebuild. We're going to be back, but we cannot bring people back.
The Family Assistance Center, again, is where so many Lahaina residents had to go to provide information on their missing or unaccounted for loved ones, and even DNA samples in some instances. We also got an update from Governor Green on those that are still missing.
The number of people that are unaccounted for. This is a number that we respect that the police and the FBI are going through. It had hovered around 1,200 for a time. A lot of duplications were there, dropped down to about 800, and now, you know, the official number is 388, but we know it to be more or less 100 less than that now.
And we're told more than 2,000 people have gone through that Family Assistance Center to get the information and resources they need and provide authorities with the information that those folks need to try and track down those that are still missing and unaccounted for. Reporting in Lahaina, I'm Casey Lund. For now, we'll send things back to you.
H&N Investigates has learned more about the timeline of emergency response for the Maui wildfires. Now, we know firefighters responded to the first fire in the morning hours, but ambulances started pulling patients for care around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Allison Blair reports.
The head of American Medical Response says calls for help were nonstop from about 4 that afternoon until about midnight. He says there were so many people with such severe injuries, medics were loading multiple patients at once into the back of ambulances. Get in, grab as many patients as possible, race to the hospital, then back to Lahaina again. For at least 9 hours, Maui's EMS crews repeatedly crossed fire lines to treat the wounded who were unable to escape on their own.
Fire crews and police crews were bringing patients to triage points where ambulances could take patients to Maui Memorial.
Maui's ambulance chief Speedy Bailey says in addition to the island's 9 ambulances, 2 more had been placed on standby that day ahead of wind warnings predicted in advance of Hurricane Dora passing south of the state. He says those rigs were mobilized about 3 o'clock that afternoon when 911 calls started pouring in.
I don't think we've ever seen anything like this, to be frank. Just the conditions that they had to deal with.
Fast-moving flames that changed direction without warning and smoke so thick it blacked out the sun.
Communications were challenged. The cell phones down, coverage, radio complications.
As for the people being pulled out of the disaster zone,
we saw some burn patients that we don't see that kind of condition generally. There were multiple times when ambulances were transporting 2 patients at least in an ambulance.
He says medics rushed a total of 32 people to the hospital with fire-related injuries. 8 had to be airlifted to Oahu. Officials at Maui Memorial Medical Center tell us Maui County's Emergency Management Agency is in charge of coordinating communication between agencies, saying when one responding agency learns of a catastrophic event, it is the protocol to notify FEMA in order to activate any other needed agencies and resources to respond. When asked who made that notification, a spokesperson said the hospital's emergency management team had already been in constant communication with the county since earlier that morning about the upcountry fire situation. The disconnect appears to have been between the county and the state.
When I first got that, I thought everyone had gotten out safely, and it wasn't until probably the next day that I started hearing about some fatalities.
H&N Investigates confirmed critical information about all of the people who were hurt and lost their lives didn't make it to the director of the state's emergency management agency until the day after Lahaina was leveled. Meanwhile, the Bisson administration still won't tell us who was calling the shots that day, while the head of Maui's emergency management agency was off island attending a FEMA conference. Looking back, Bailey says he commends his ambulance crews along with the other first responders who risked their lives, saying they did everything they could.
They don't like to be called heroes, but they were heroic and they did awesome, amazing work like they're trained to do.
While none of the ambulance crews working were hurt on duty, we're told one of their team members is still among the missing. Several others' homes burned. Despite that unimaginable loss, Bailey says AMR's commitment to the community is unwavering. Allison Blair, Hawaii News Now.
In an effort to get more victims identified, the State Department of Public Safety is tapping into another set of the population that may be willing to provide DNA samples. Inmates at every Hawaii jail and prison are being offered DNA testing if they believe a Maui relative is among those killed in the wildfire. Even those at the Saguaro Correctional Center in Arizona, where dozens of Hawaii inmates are being held. The information just went out to jails and prisons this week. Inmates and staff can participate.
And I would think people would want to know if their family and loved ones are affected at all. So the wardens are querying the staff now and the inmates to find out. And once they provide me with that list, then we will begin the process of collecting that DNA.
Those convicted of felony crimes have provided DNA already, but DPS says that's a separate database not being used to help identify fire victims.
Hawaii's Emergency Management Agency has canceled Hawaii's monthly siren system test for September. It was set for this Friday at 11:45 a.m., but that coincides with a planned moment of worldwide prayer and remembrance for Lahaina's fire victims. HIEMA officials say they also did not want to cause further distress as people are already traumatized. The next monthly test is set for October 2nd.
Now a look at some other headlines around Oahu. There was a stabbing yesterday in Maui that turned deadly. Police released the name of the suspect this morning. He's been identified as 47-year-old Matthew Seaman, and he was arrested shortly after the incident. He's accused of stabbing a 32-year-old man following an argument at Maui Beach Park. The victim's cousin tells us he gave the victim CPR until an ambulance arrived, but he later died at the hospital. Also in Maui, HPD is asking for help finding this person of interest. He's wanted in connection with a Maui murder. He was with Ryan Valerian before he was shot and killed near Maliona Street on August 18th. One suspect, Kaea Costales, has already been arrested and charged. The person of interest is believed to be in his mid to late 20s and about 5'8" to 5'10" in height. Any tips, you're asked to call Crime Stoppers at 955-8300.
Tragedy overseas hits close to home. 3 U.S. Marines killed in an Osprey crash in Australia were based here on Oahu. The trio stationed at Kaneohe Bay were the only fatalities among the 23 Marines on board. 21-year-old Corporal Spencer Collart from Virginia was crew chief. 37-year-old Major Tobin Lewis of Colorado was the executive officer, and 29-year-old Captain Eleanor LeBeau of Illinois was the pilot. The aircraft was one of 2 taking part in a 12-day international exercise in Darwin involving troops from 5 countries. The training is now on hold.
This recovery and investigation will be prolonged, enduring and complex. We are planning to be at the crash site for at least 10 days at this stage.
At least 20 other Marines were hurt in the crash, 3 of them still hospitalized. The Osprey was one of 10 sent from Kaneohe in May, along with crew members from Squadrons 363 and 174. They were due back in October.
Former state representative Kaniela Ing is not allowed to leave Oahu without permission from a court for the next year. This comes after he pled no contest to a misdemeanor campaign spending violation for failing to file a report with the state commission. He must also pay a $100 fine. Ing previously paid a fine for using campaign funds to cover personal expenses 7 years ago.
We're learning more from health experts about 30 naloxone or Narcan vending machines. The machines will be placed throughout the state in Honolulu, Kauai, Maui, and Hawaii County. 6 will be placed in various prisons and jails. Naloxone is a medication designed to reverse opioid overdoses. According to the CDC, 68% of the reported overdose deaths in the U.S. last year involved synthetic opioids. Officials say Hawaii had over 320 overdose deaths last year, a record for the state.
And in news out of Red Hill, another step is now underway to prepare for the defueling of the facility starting in October. Crews began repacking 2 pipelines that will be used to drain the underground tanks to collection points at Pearl Harbor. Repacking involves filling the lines with fuel and removing all air to ensure a stable flow of fuel assisted by gravity. The repacking is expected to take several days. Let's go ahead and give you a live look now out from Maui. This is the Maui Ocean Center in Ma'alaia. A beautiful day, but as you can see, the trade winds are picking up. Let's send things over to Guy Hagi.
How's it on this Tuesday? The winds will be getting stronger starting today. In fact, stronger winds tomorrow and again on Thursday will trigger a fire weather watch. So heads up on that. That's your first alert. We're also tracking Tropical Storm Irwin, expected to move into cooler water and weaken. So it will not bring us any severe weather, although it could interrupt the trade wind flow, maybe bring us some rain in about a week. This morning, the rain is focused mainly on those windward areas, but there's not a lot out there. We could see a bump in those showers later tonight. And those winds, again, will be getting stronger today. That's why humidity levels will be getting lower for the next couple of days. So Tuesday actually looks pretty nice, right? A few showers to start the day, lots of afternoon sunshine, and those trade winds running pretty swift at 15 to 25 miles an hour. And look for a nice little boost for the south shores today. That's where the waves will be best. Going to be choppier over in the windward side at 2 to 4 feet. So today should be pretty mellow. A few windward and Mauka showers, stronger trade winds due in tomorrow. That's your first alert because we are going to get that fire weather watch posted tomorrow afternoon through Thursday afternoon. And then on Friday, the winds back down, humidity levels start to rise, and those breezy winds will ease up next week.
Fire danger is back in the headlines here in Hawaii this week. Winds are going to be picking up across the state with sustained winds peaking around 25 to 30 miles per hour on Thursday afternoon, with wind gusts closer to 35 to 40 miles per hour. We're tracking Tropical Storm Irwin in the eastern Pacific. It's not going to impact us in terms of rainfall, but just like Hurricane Dora, Tropical Storm Irwin is still going to interact with a high pressure fan north of the islands. It's going to be breezy this week. We're expected to be at red flag level warnings across the islands, but nothing like what we saw with Hurricane Dora's passing to the south. The opposite circulation of both of these systems are going to be pushing air towards the Hawaiian Islands. Think of it as 2 different forces acting on the air, so the air has to move twice as fast. And a dry air mass will be surrounding the state by the time we get to Wednesday afternoon, creating the ideal environment for wildfires to both start and spread. Please avoid any outdoor burning on the back half of this work week. And drought conditions across the state are worsening. The latest drought monitor from the Hawaii State climatologist shows that all of West Maui is now classified under severe drought, level 2 out of 4 on the drought scale. And as always, to keep up with the latest forecast, download the Hawaii News Now First Alert weather app. We'll keep you posted as conditions change.
Idalia is gaining strength, now a hurricane as it barrels toward Florida's Gulf Coast. Landfall is expected on Wednesday morning somewhere north of Tampa. Larry Seward has more.
The outer bands of Idalia are bringing rain to the Florida Keys as the storm intensifies and makes its way north. Residents along Florida's Gulf Coast are bracing for a major hurricane to make landfall less than a year after Hurricane Ian slammed this region.
It's disheartening to have another storm come this way, and you start to wonder, are we going to get hit over and over and over again?
22 counties are currently under some type of evacuation order, with Idalia threatening a 12-foot storm surge in some areas and the potential for at least 111 miles per hour sustained winds.
This is going to be a major hurricane, likely a Category 3, so everyone just remain vigilant, continue to watch and listen to the local orders that you receive from your local emergency management personnel.
Here in Tampa, forecasters say storm surge could hit 7 feet, which could cause significant flooding in one of Florida's largest cities.
So if you can just go in 10, 20 miles inland where the water won't be an issue, that's what we are advising to all of our residents, and do it now.
Idalia dumped heavy rain and caused flooding in parts of western Cuba. Forecasters say it's a sneak peek of what residents along Florida's Gulf Coast will see tomorrow. Larry Seward, CBS News, Tampa, Florida.
And in consumer news, Amazon is raising its free shipping minimum for some non-Prime members. To qualify for free shipping, non-Prime members typically have to purchase an order totaling at least $25. But on Monday, the company said it has raised that minimum to $35. An Amazon spokesperson described the higher $35 threshold as a test. The trial with the higher fee is being carried out for regions based on zip codes, meaning all customers in a given region will see the new policy applied to their orders. Amazon said changing the free shipping threshold could drive more consumers to pay the roughly $140 annual fee to join its Prime member service. Well, keep an eye out for that next time you do some online shopping. Well, we want to go ahead and give you some lighter news now. There was an excited fan at an Adele concert in Las Vegas. She actually stopped the song to speak up for him on his behalf. Take a listen.
How much does this fan love Adele? So much that he seemed to be in an Adele-induced trance, recording himself with a selfie stick at one of the singer's recent Las Vegas concerts. He was gently scolded for standing, blocking the view of others, and then, 2 seconds after she left, even Adele noticed from the stage. As security quietly tried to get him to tone it down, Adele stopped the show mid-song.
What is going on with that young fan there? He's been bothered so much since I came on for standing up. What's going on with him? Yes, you with a stick in your hand.
Rescued by his goddess.
You can stand up now, darling. You can stand up.
Even security seemed insecure when admonished by Adele.
What are you doing? Why are you bothering him? Can you leave him alone, please?
You don't have to sit down. You're fine. Stay right here.
But some online commenters were annoyed. Him and Adele thought it was fine, but I'm sure the people who paid a ton of money to sit behind him and stare at the back of his head are pissed. And more succinctly, you're not special, just sit the F down. But he wasn't sitting.
Thank you.
When he posted a clip on TikTok, the unidentified fan wrote to Adele, "You started talking to me and I literally stopped breathing." His hand visibly trembled as he took a drink.
You enjoyed the show. Leave him alone.
When Adele stops singing, even security changes its tune. Ginimos, CNN.
Well, I mean, I can totally understand how other people might have been upset, but...
Sure, you're at a concert, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
both sides. But it was just cute to see Adele stand up for him. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Have a great rest of your day.